We want to share our hearts with you and really find out what's going on.
It's video.
Hit, I knew instantly that this was part of the agenda that we had been fighting against for 5 years. They were using fear to make sure that Canadians complied, and communism and socialism catapulted. They were able to advance this agenda very quickly, because what do we need for socialism to exist? We need the majority of Canadians reliant on the government. Millions of Canadians were relying on the government for finances in order to pay their bills. It was brilliant, but we saw it. We knew. There was many times when I was just on my knees before God, and one of the times I just prayed and I said, how do we come against this? How do we come against the lies of the left? And you know, God spoke to me in an audible voice that day, and He said, with truth. So I've been on a truth campaign. We were coming out with facts, with evidence that there was no actual pandemic and that it was all part of the campaign. Everything that the government did from the onset was illegal. But most Canadians didn't know that. We have a criminal code. We have a constitution and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. These are not something that we need to negotiate. These are guaranteed. And when they went after our kids, when you want to put masks on children who are developing and growing and interfere with their oxygen and what they need for healthy bodies, you have gone way too far. But it didn't stop there. It went then to vaccination. All of a sudden, the health officers start making an announcement that 12 to 17-year-old minors can decide to take a vaccine and that they don't need parental consent. And so right away, we started developing notices of liability. And so our first one was to protect our kids in the school. And as soon as we launched that, parents across the nation were signing them and bringing it in, and it was having a powerful effect. And the notice of liabilities just began to grow. It has been such an incredibly successful campaign that the media, the government, and the unions are all trying to find a way to counter the notices of liability. They know that what we are doing is correct. We've also provided and developed resources for business owners, and this has just been amazing, the success that we're having in managing to keep businesses open when whomever it is coming in and saying, you're not complying with the mandates. A mandate is not law. It can't be legislated that they can interfere with your business. You have the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. Security of the person means that you need to work and provide for your family. We're not just focused on equipping Canadians in a tangible way personally, but we felt that legal action was incredibly necessary. So we've hired the top constitutional lawyer in Canada, Rocco Galati, and we're commencing action against the BC and federal government. And I look forward to the day that these individuals are held to account for the crimes against humanity that they're committing. The biggest thing that Action for Canada is doing right now is launching the chapters across the nation. What we're targeting right now is not only getting our business campaigns into the chapters and our church campaign and the parent campaign, but we want to affect the next elections at all levels in a very real and powerful way. So we're going after the school boards. We're going to replace these individuals that have no interest in what is best for our children. And we're going to take back our provincial and federal legislatures. To make this happen, we need you to join Action for Canada and become part of the most powerful grassroots movement to protect faith, family, and freedom. You have the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. Security of the person means that you need to work and provide for your family. We're not just focused on equipping Canadians in a tangible way personally, but we felt that legal action was incredibly necessary. So we've hired the top constitutional lawyer in Canada, Rocco Galati, and we're commencing action against the BC and federal government. And I look forward to the day that these individuals are held to account for the crimes against humanity that they're committing. The biggest thing that Action for Canada is doing right now is launching the chapters across the nation. What we're targeting right now is not only getting our business campaigns into the chapters and our church campaign and the parent. The next
elections at all levels in a very real and powerful way. So we're going after the school boards. We're going to replace these individuals that have no interest in what is best for our children. And we're going to take back our provincial and federal legislatures. To make this happen, we need you to join Action for Canada and become part of the most powerful grassroots movement to protect faith, family, and freedom.
Right. Okay, in Action for Canada, we always open with a short prayer and with singing O Canada. So if you'll bear with us and just bow your heads, we'd appreciate it, and we'll open with prayer. And then if you would rise up, we'll sing O Canada together. Father in heaven, we want to thank you for this evening. We thank you for every person that has come here, and we ask that you open wide their eyes, give them clarity and understanding, help them to really know what's going on in our world and in our country in particularly. And Lord, we thank you for all of them. We ask that you would be exalted tonight in Jesus' name. Amen. We'll sing O Canada now. Thank you. You may be seated. I want to welcome each and every one of you here this evening. We're very pleased that you joined us, and we are having our very first town hall meeting. So I'm sure as you came in, there's water. If you need it, you're more than welcome to it. And I believe that you all have pencils and some paper. So we are going to have speakers this evening. Andrew and Sue, which I will introduce them later and tell you a little bit about them. And we are going to have a question and answer period after. So think about what's being said, what's being shared, and make sure you write down your questions, because I know Jerry's going to just love to answer all of them. And I'm going to introduce Jerry right now. She's going to speak to you a little bit about Action for Canada.
Thank you, Val. Good evening to everyone. Everybody hear me okay? I've got a voice that projects. So welcome to our information night about 15-minute cities, smart cities. It's called by a number of names. It's so good to see so many concerned citizens out tonight. I was at the event last Thursday in Comox Valley, so I would say that freedom fighting is alive and well in the Comox Valley, and that the concerned and awake citizens population is growing. These are discouraging times for sure, but I hope that you leave encouraged tonight. So it's also so good to see so many freedom groups represented here tonight. This is an Action for Canada sponsored event, but we welcome everybody, all faiths, all walks of life, all groups. The government would like nothing more than to have us divided, to divide and conquer. But we all have the same goal, the restoration of our God-given rights and freedoms as Canadians in this beautiful land of ours. And I don't know about you, every time I sing the O Canada, I see the pictures of our beautiful land, it makes me very emotional when I see what's happening to our country. So we're going to talk about that tonight. You'll find that our speakers are well versed in what is going on. And at times I will probably get a little bit emotional. So as you will learn tonight, the implementation of the so-called 15-minute city lockdown agenda is well on its way to taking away our freedoms as Canadians. And it is alive and well, and it is nipping at our heels here in the Comox Valley. As you will also learn tonight, this affects all of us, even in the small community of the beautiful Comox Valley. And what I will briefly share is a perfect segue into Sue and Andy's talk tonight. So before we get to our two speakers, Sue and Andy, I'm just going to take a few moments just to talk about our Organisation for Canada. So it was founded a number of years ago by Tanya Gaw, who you saw speaking, and at its core it is reaching out to millions of Canadians and uniting our voices in opposition to the destructive policies that are tearing at our nation. It is dedicated to preserving the rights and freedoms of all Canadians. Through call to action campaigns, we educate, we equip, and we empower citizens to take action. We are committed to protecting faith, family, and freedom. So our mission is to protect Canada's rich heritage, which is founded on Judeo-Christian biblical principles. So these principles form our laws and values and are the basis of a system of governance that sets us apart from totalitarian, extremist, and communist regimes, giving Canadians the freedom to believe or not to believe without fear of persecution, oppression, or even death. Now, if you have any trouble with that, I'd like you to think about a communist agenda or a Muslim agenda, countries where there is a repressive regime in place, and there is not that freedom to believe or not to believe. Take Sharia law, for example. So as an immigrant myself, I emigrated to Canada from Ireland a number of years ago, and one of the things that attracted me to Canada was the freedom that we experience here in our country. And, you know, I certainly believe that our freedoms are being gradually eroded, and I would say maybe not even gradually. So we have 4 key campaigns as an organisation. So the first one, and we consider probably the most important, although they're all important, is the SOGI, the anti-CSE. I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight, but the focus tonight will be more on the 15-minute cities, but you'll find that they are really connected. So our fight is very much multifaceted. It's literally like playing whack-a-mole. So other organizations have different focuses, but we all have the same objective. Once again, the restoration of our rights and freedoms as Canadians. So we also have one of our second campaigns is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or the Smart 15-Minute Cities, and that is why we're hosting this event tonight. We really want to make you aware of what is happening. And then the third and fourth campaign are sort of connected. So we're so concerned about the children and the Marxist ideology that has been pushed in our school systems. We are really encouraging parents to try and homeschool their children. Now, we know that that is not really an option for a lot of people, but we're trying to provide support for them as much as possible. And that ties into trying to activate the churches, because when you think about it, a lot of churches are sitting vacant Monday to Friday, and if we could somehow connect the two and have them open as schools, this is something that we are trying to do across Canada. You know, we certainly believe, you know, that the Christian church should be the moral compass for the nation, standing up for justice and righteousness, if nothing else to protect the children. So we have campaigns in place to try and wake up the churches to the reality of what is happening in our schools and in our nation. If you get a chance, I would encourage you to, there's a book called Letter to the American Church, which is written by Eric Metaxas. It's a book and it's also a movie. And he really calls out the churches. He makes a comparison to what happened in Nazi Germany, where the churches stood silent. And we all remember what happened, how that turned out in World War II. So we really believe that, that we can combine the churches and the homeschooling program to basically keep our children safe. We need people to realize that this is an all-out war on our freedoms and on our children. So we recognize that we have a problem in Canada. It's very much multifaceted, as I said, many heads, many legs, and we can't do it all. We focus on our campaigns, but there are many organizations and probably many people here who are representing who are doing other things in our fight for freedom. So how does this happen? And I know that Sue and Andy will go into this in a little bit more detail, but basically it is global control through local governance. And that is why it is so important that we act locally. We can't get to the bigger names, the George Soros and Bill Gates, etc., but we can make a difference locally. So what they tried to do is they tried to bypass national sovereignty, constitutions and laws. We all know we've been standing up for our rights and for the constitution that we have in place. Really important. These are embedded in our society. NGO control through local policy change, absolutely. Public-private partnerships, this is happening. And I'm not going into a lot of detail because I know that Sue is going to probably touch on this and probably Andy as well. Weaponizing bureaucracy, I'll talk about a little bit about what that looks like. And have a look at the 45 goals of communism, divide and conquer. You will see that there are a lot of similarities with what is happening in our country. I love that picture as well too. If the people stand, it's game over. So that's all of you people. We need to stand up. So weaponizing bureaucracy, what does that look like? There are various theaters of battle. Schools and school boards. We know that they have been weaponized against us. I'm on chapter calls every week with the chapter leaders across Canada. And today, we even heard about one of our chapter leaders in Trail up in northern BC. He put a requisition into the school board to do a delegation last June. Finally, he was given an audience this week, or last week actually, but they would only do it over Zoom. And as soon as he started to point out what was happening, they shut him down. They said, there's no place for this here. So it is unbelievable what is happening. They are, and probably Andy will refer to it a little bit as well, about what has been happening in within the councils. Elected officials, they absolutely have been hijacked. Regulatory bodies, 100%. Physicians Association in Canada, I was in healthcare for 40 years. My regulatory body was the Physiotherapy Association of BC. When it came to mandating vaccines, there was no protection for us. We knew that they had already been hijacked. They were not standing up for their employers. Financial institutions, 100%. And Sue will probably talk a little bit about this. Surveillance cities, that's what these smart cities are. That's what this is all about. Media, who watches mainstream media anymore? Anybody here? You're not going to get the truth in mainstream media. It's been hijacked. Even our local paper, our local Comox Valley Herald. There was, I don't know whether you saw, and it sort of ties into it a little bit, what I'm going to talk about, but a few weeks ago, there was an article in the paper. They were proudly announcing that they are putting those tampon machines in all the males' bathrooms in Comox Valley. Why would they even put that in the paper? It's absolutely insane. So, yeah, in the men's washrooms. Makes no sense whatsoever. Our legal system has been hijacked, trying to get justice in our legal system. You know how long it is we've been trying to get justice for Bonnie Henry? It's insane. Businesses, public and private, have been hijacked. Partnership with these ESGs, I'm sure Sue will go into that a little bit more if you're not sure what they are, and the diversity and DEI policies. Well, we know where that's going. Look what happened to Bud Light, Planet Fitness. But they are hijacking the businesses, and this is what's happening. And family. If you capture a family, if you destroy a family, you destroy a country. So they're after our families. So what does it look like indoctrination in school and media? Of course, they're pushing the 17 sustainable goals, making them think that they're going to be amazing global citizens and agents of change. I know for a fact that they're pushing this crazy, scary climate change program in schools and really frightening the kids, scaring them into, we've got to be agents of change, right? CSE, the comprehensive, that's basically what I've touched on as well. Complete, pure Marxist ideology. They are trying to depopulate the world. What better way than to sterilize the children? Critical race theory. Well, we all know where that's going. It's not so cool to be a white male anymore, right? We're white supremacists. They're labeling us. They're trying to divide us. And then UNDRIP, and I think Sue will go into that a little bit as well too, the United Nations Declaration. Right, Sue?
No, I don't.
Yeah, well, you don't have time, but that's another, it's another area where total control. And again, we could spend all night just focusing on one of these. They're so complicated. Stealing their innocence. I thought it's important that we put a slide like that up. This is what is happening. These are our children. This is what is happening to our children. Robbing their future. They are coming after our children. The United Nations has an agenda to get our children. And yes, stop the global agenda. You know, this is all comes from our website. Stop the global agenda to use children as agents for change. Our children have been hijacked. And I do want to say at this stage, you know, as an organization, we have been labeled as, you know, transphobic, homophobic. We have nothing, you know, people can do whatever they want at 18 years of age and under. There's no judgment here. It is our children that we are concerned about. This is our children that we are concerned about. I just want to stress that. If we lose our children and our families, we lose the country. You know, they've been indoctrinating the universities for years with this woke Marxist agenda. Now they're after our schools and our children. And you know, it's just so true. You know, silence is not an option. The very well-being of our children is at stake. So what do we do as a solution, as an organization? So as you can see, this is a map of Canada. Each of the little maple leaves there represents a chapter. So what we are trying to do is mobilize ordinary citizens such as yourselves and attack the agenda at a local grassroots level. Anything I've read about how we tackle this issue, it's all done at a local grassroots level. It's done at a local. We can't get to the big guns, but we can certainly make a difference at our local grassroots level. So how do we do it? We do it by educating, equipping, and empowering. Educating. You're here tonight. We're going to educate you about what's going on. There's a verse in the Bible which says, the people perished for lack of knowledge. And that is so true. How do we do that? Flyers. If you look at the handouts on your chair, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I've given you a flyer to take home, and I'll just talk about those in a second. Writing letters to your local officials, your MLAs, anybody who you think has any voice in government or has any influence at all. Write letters. I'm not a good letter writer, but I've had to learn the last couple of years. Serving notices of liability. Tanya talked a little bit about that earlier. Basically, you're putting pressure on an individual in authority and you're holding them personally responsible. And it has worked. You know, because people want to pass it off. What did they say in Nazi Germany? Oh, I was just following orders. Well, no, we're going to hold you personally responsible, right? We all saw that, right, through COVID, through the lockdowns. You know, putting you know, young people in front of restaurants and stopping you going into hospitals and, you know, all following orders. Social media, get out on your social media and tell people what's going on. Research, evidence collection. You know, those of you who are good at researching, I know Sue is a great researcher as long as I've known her, and then she's going to share all of this. But, you know, just dig a little deeper and go off mainstream media. And deliver info packages. So there's actually a business info package that I'm going to talk about just briefly as well too, and I'm going to give you the tools to take with you. So this is the 15-minute cities flyer. You should all have one in your hand. On there, it's just a piece of paper. There's a lot of information on it. So I would challenge you to take that home and give that to even one person to try and wake them up, to try and tell them what's going on. We have people delivering these flyers all over the country. Going to schools, delivering Soji ones, going out onto the streets, going into businesses, just telling them, educating them, telling them what's going on. And it's backed up by, if you go on our website is so comprehensive. We really back up our information before we put it on an information package. We put reams of research into it to make sure that we are stating facts. Okay, this is not an opinion. These are facts about what is happening. And then the Soji one is also there. I didn't give you the bad version, the pornographic one. There's a one that's far more pornographic, and which is shocking. But this is what our children are looking at in the schools. Okay, so we have some of our chapter members going out, handing them out to parents, going to that the first day of kindergarten, and parents are saying thank you, and you know, they're going to them and saying, I wish I had known this before I put my children into school. I have a grandson going into school in September, and I am absolutely terrified about what he is going to learn. Next to the, on the screen there, next to the flyer is the notice of liability. And this, again, is holding them personally responsible. It is, if you look at it, we've got the criminal code listed there. It is a criminal offence to show young people pornographic material. They don't realize this. So it's making them aware, you know, whether it's school trustees. I hate to say it because I'm sure there are some teachers, and not all teachers are doing it, but many are, and maybe they're doing it even unknowingly. The business resource package that we have just put together, there is a business letter that you'll find at the back, but there's a postcard that I put on your desk as well, which is double-sided, which also will give, and if there's any business owners here, which hopefully there are, it will give you information. I heard actually today, or a couple of days ago, that there are some banks in Australia that are now refusing cash and checks. So it is well on the way, okay? You know, if you looked at how Australia was affected during the lockdowns, it was almost like the guinea pig, Canada and Australia. So they're starting to push it in Australia again. And then a use cash poster, really important. We have to start using our cash. So bringing that into, if you know a business owner, give them that information. Remember, knowledge is power. The second phase we do is we equip them. Attending all the council meetings, really important. Find out what is going on at a local level. If you can't do it, just make sure that you have somebody who goes to those, because they're sneaking laws through. Sue told me, you know, about that tampon legislation, whatever it's called, that was snuck through. There was only one person who objected to it, right? So we need to be, not even one.
It was a UNICEF letter.
Oh, a UNICEF letter. Anyway, the law was pushed through at the council level. Request delegations. Like I said, they are trying to stonewall us, but we have to keep pushing, requesting delegations, whether it's about the smart city or about the SOGI. Developing petitions. I think Suzanne has a petition here tonight that is to be signed, but petitions are really important. And we have a lot of petitions on our website, so please take a look and make sure that you add your name to it. Remember, there's an election coming up, and the politicians look at these things because they want their votes. They want your votes. And if they think that we're pushing against something, they may possibly change their mind about certain things. Network with policymakers. And again, we believe in partnering with the local elected officials. We don't want to go in guns blazing. We want to go in and partner with them and meet with them. We have a lot of our chapter members across Canada meeting with MLAs, meeting with elected officials and trying to work with them, you know, and say, are you aware? Right? Maybe they're not aware. Maybe they're not aware. Remember, it's their children that are affected as well. So, so please don't get it that we are going in and rah-rah. A lot of times we are trying to work with them and you know, get them on our side. Engage elected officials. That's just, and we have on our website, we actually have a list of elected officials. So you can actually go on there. You can click on Comox Valley, find out who your elected official are, find out their number and their email address, and engage with them. I would really encourage you to engage with them. Here we are, engaging, write your MLA and CC the ministers, meet with your local MLA. This is a small town. You know, we're more fortunate that way because sometimes it's your neighbour is one of your elected official, and go out for coffee with them and just say, are you aware? Write to the NDP for all the good it takes, but anyway, we'll keep doing it, right? Write to the mayor and the city councillors, meet with your mayor and city councillors. So like I said, we have a list of elected officials on our website. And the last phase is empowering. Again, meet with ministers, develop policies, public speaking. You know, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I wasn't doing this 3 years ago. I hated public speaking, but, you know, I feel it's important to get the word out. Running for office, awesome. I don't know if we have any of our Conservative candidates here, but I've certainly met them in the last couple of, and I'm not saying, you know, that we are non-partisan. I'm not saying we vote for them, but, you know, if any of you feel called to run for office, to make a change, because sometimes, you know, the change has to come from within, right? and serving our communities. And this is what I feel, this is serving our communities. And last but not least, we believe in the power of prayer. Prayer moves mountains. We believe that this is primarily a battle between good and evil. And even if you don't come, even if you don't believe in prayer, come and join us. I'm just going to show you a quick video of what we do. It's nothing scary. We walk through the towns, we hold our Canadian flag high, and we just pray for our elected officials, we pray for our schools. We had a walk through Cumberland on Saturday, and we did meet with a little bit of opposition, but that's okay. And we believe that that's what's going to change and bring about the change in our country. So I'm just going to queue up a little, and that's some of the dates if any of you are interested in joining us. We have a 7-week walk we're calling it a Walk for Revival, to try and change what is going on in the world. So just as I cue this up. So, and just in closing, I am here to tell you that they are coming after our children. They're coming after our land, they're coming after our possessions, and they are coming after our freedoms. So now is not the time to be silent. That's why we need you to come and join us in the battle. Okay, let me just, sorry.
Action for Canada making their march on the Chilliwack School Board. As the sun was shining on a Friday afternoon and most staff at the Chilliwack School Board had gone home for the day, Action for Canada held a prayer walk outside of the building on Airport Road. The actual march to the school board office started at 3 in the afternoon at Chilliwack City Hall and then made its way to the school headquarters. This walk was for, and we quote, for the school board, its trustees, teachers, employees, and students, where, quote, we prayed and marched around the building 7 times. Because we've got a time constraint, I'm going to cut it off, but I don't know, I find that video amazingly powerful. It's just Canadians out walking with their flag and just appealing to God for our country. So thank you for my little introduction there, and I think we're going to Andy again. Okay.
Well, that was a great presentation. It was certainly filled with lots and lots of information. Thank you, Jerry. We appreciate it very much. We're going to call on Andy Pearson. He's going to come and speak to us about the 15-minute cities. However, I just wanted to share a little bit about his, who he is, his bio. He says he doesn't, this is what he wrote for me to share with you, that he doesn't have a title which certifies that he is eminent or an authority on the subject matter of tonight's presentation. Rather, he says he's just an ordinary citizen of Courtenay who has experienced the seismic shifts across this country and the Western world. And he's concerned and feels that he has a duty to act and to inform others and hopefully inspire people to take action. Canada is encroaching in the abyss, and he feels that we are perilously close to witnessing our fall into quite darkness. Truth and righteousness should be our cause. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, I hope I said that right. Pardon? Okay, what they said. The simple step of courageous individuals is not to take part in the lie. One word of truth outweighs the world. So, Andrew, would you like to come and share now, please?
Just bear with me a minute, folks. There's the HDMI cable. Okay, good evening. Can you all hear me? Okay, good. I'm well aware of the time constraint, so I need to get my marching boots on here. Tonight, I do wish to discuss with you the 15-minute city initiative and how this relates to the official community plan. So this is the meat. Jerry, with all respect, has just given you the milk. I'm going to give you the meat of what's really going on. I am concerned. I am very concerned. And this has caused me to present to you this evening. I feel that my concerns are warranted. I think that they merit attention and discussion, which has caused me to present to you this evening. It's something I would rather not do, but I feel the need to do so. So, what are the 15-minute cities? You can see it here. It's essentially as follows. It's everyone living in a city and who should have access to essential urban services within a 15-minute walk. Furthermore, it states the following. I needn't read all of this, but I just want to focus on the yellow. The yellow is important here. There's a lexicon with regard to these kind of documents, these government documents, plans, etc. It's very important to spend a little bit of time on these and understand exactly what they mean. So I've highlighted here behind me, inclusive and equitable. Well, what do they mean? Inclusivity, as I understand, is all-encompassing. And equitable means, so inclusive is all-encompassing, and equitable means the same outcome. So my question to you, which I wish to pose is, could you and I be experiencing eventually the same outcome? And what does that mean? How is that going to impact you? So I wish now to move on to the official community plan. I don't know if you've heard of the official community plan. Has anybody heard of this? Okay, so a few of you have, not many. It's very important that you are aware of this document. So why? Well, I could read this, but I'm not going to. You can read it for yourselves, but I just want to emphasize the following. This is the blueprint for the future of our community. This is not peculiar to the Courtenay City Council. There are many municipalities across the whole of Canada which have the official community plan. This is not at the thinking stages. They're not thinking through this or considering it or thinking about its implementation. This is the blueprint. It is already happening before our eyes. Perhaps you're just not aware of it. So in 2022, the City of Courtenay adopted the official community plan. It's now a bylaw, 3070, and this was in 2022. So I just want to focus on a little bit of the official community plan. This is on page 11. Now, just to bear in mind, I've selected just a few things from the official community plan. There's much, 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 much more which I could focus on, but I don't have time. So on page 11 here, it says that it's a local response to significant challenges and opportunities of our time, including climate change. So I just want to focus on climate change here. This will be this is what they're moving towards. There's a net zero policy, and Sue will talk more about this in greater detail. But for now, I wish to move on to the following. So on pages 14 and 22, it states here that what they are intending to do is to drive down, GHG stands for greenhouse gas emissions, so that they're intending to reduce these. And as you can see the dates behind me here, we have 2030, which is 6 years away, according to my numerical skills, and 2050 is 26 years away. So a 45% reduction. What will that mean for you? How will it impact you directly? How will it impact your family? How will it impact your pocket? These are questions to consider. So what I wanted to do, which I omitted, I wanted to present before the City of Courtenay as a deputation, because I felt that these questions needed to be addressed. However, you should know that in spite of my requesting to present, I was turned down every time. And even now, I'm still waiting for an email to come back to me with regard to a question I had. So the question I wanted to pose to the council was as follows. I wanted to know how they intend to achieve a 45% reduction in community greenhouse gases and net zero emissions by 2050. The most important part for me here is sections 6, 7 and 9 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Well, why? Well, because 6, 7 and 9 are as follows. The mobility rights, which means the right to travel. 7, this means the right to secure employment, to make a living for oneself. And number 9 is freedom from arbitrary imprisonment or detention. So the question I have for you as we go through these slides is, could you and I, in the near future, be living in an open prison where our rights to travel and our rights to secure employment are infringed upon, where we're constrained and limited? And again, what would that mean for you and me? On page 87 of the official community plan, it states that 59% of Courtenay's emissions is an area where change must occur. Again, looking at the lexicon here, they're using the imperative must. This is not up for discussion. This is not up for negotiation or consideration. This has already been implemented, and they're driving this through. The question I had was this: what are you intending to do to ensure that change must occur in the use of transportation? On page 88, it goes on to state that Courtenay is well below the provincial average of 13 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent per year and the national average of 19.5 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. Nevertheless, they intend to establish the targets of this the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius, not rising above. I want to draw attention to the word international. Courtenay City Council and many other city councils which have adopted the official community plan, with all respect to them, are not working on your and my behalf. They represent unelected organisations and bodies. They are being directed and they are expected to implement these targets. The question I had again for City Council, had I been able to meet with them, was this: what problems do you anticipate or envisage in your vision of reducing these emissions? Moving on to page 89, again, these are selected issues which I've lifted from the official community plan. So it states that the final step is to switch to low carbon and renewable energy sources. So it mentions further on down, you can see natural gas to heat pumps or replace a conventional vehicle with an electric vehicle. A friend of mine stated, as you can tell, I'm from the UK, this is car culture here. This is the second largest country in the world, as I understand, and we're dependent on cars to travel for commuting, for leisure purposes or business. Can you imagine if your car is removed from you? What will it mean if you no longer use gas or wood as a heating source? What are you expected to do? How are you expected to travel? Again, these are concerns and questions which I had and would have posed to City Council had I been given the opportunity. So the question I had was this: do you think that every resident would be able to afford these changes? And how are you intending to ensure that this happens? On page 91, it states that Island Health supports increasing physical activity in our daily lives. I'm not averse to physical activity. I think everybody should be healthy. But again, what does this mean? What are they really driving at? The questions I had for them was as follows. Are you expecting all residents to walk in order to shop at places like Costco, or to reach their places of employment, or to make medical appointments? On page 95 and 96, it talks about transportation, and this being the sector which is a target for Courtenay Council. They state that vehicles, bikes and scooters play an important role, or will play an important role in reducing greenhouse gases, and then 30% of trips by walking, cycling and transit by 2030. I don't like shopping at Costco, but I want to use this as an example. My wife knows that I don't like it. I'll sit in the car or won't even go. I'll sit at home. But I have seen people come out of Costco with volumes of shopping. I've also seen sofas and also beds come out of there and refrigerators. Can you imagine shopping at Costco, travelling on your bicycle and somehow getting a sofa on the back of your bicycle? If you can't get on the bicycle, what would you do if you're using transit? What if transit is on time, which is very rare in Western countries, as I've experienced? But let's say it is on time. What if it's full? And how on earth do you get this sofa or bed onto public transit? It beggars belief. Anyway, let's move on. So the question I had, I wanted to know, what does 30% of trips mean? I also wanted to know, and this is really important here, if they intended to zone Courtenay. I don't know if you're aware, but the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is east side, wherever that is of this country, they've already introduced or expecting their citizens to produce a QR code to go in. They're not charged. Non-residents are expected to produce this, and they will be charged $30 for going in and out. Back in my motherland, the UK, Oxfordshire, the city is Oxford. I don't know if you're aware of how the boroughs are, which is what they're called, these areas, they're called boroughs. So within these boroughs are several towns, and it's inevitable, it's unavoidable that you travel from town to town. Why? Maybe you have family there, employment, shopping, utilities, etc. Sorry, not utilities, what's the other word I'm after? No, I know what I mean. Not utilities. I can't think of it. Anyway, it'll come to me eventually. But you have everything there which is available. So in the city of Oxford, what they've done is created a ring road, but they're expecting everybody to go to the ring road and not across the borough. And they've started charging people for that, or rather they intended to charge people. It caused a furore. Amenities is the word, thank you, I wanted to use. So it caused a furore in the borough. And I just want to draw your attention. If, for example, the Gulf of St. Lawrence gains traction and other municipalities follow, let's say, for example, you and I want to travel to Victoria. How many towns or cities are we going to go through? Parksville, Nanaimo. What have we got after that? We've got Cowage and Duncan, Victoria. Imagine if you're charged, and that's a possibility. Okay, so let's move on to another slide here. In page 109, it states that by 2040, 80% of buildings before 2022 are retrofit. By 2050, 100% of buildings before 22 are retrofitted. How are you going to afford that? That's a lot of money. What does retrofitted mean? Could it be your insulation? Could it be in your windows? One thing that's really important to mention here is, I think, just bear with me. Yeah, just let me deal with these questions first. So again, I wanted to know, what does retrofitting, who will pay for the retrofitting of older buildings or homes? And how is this going to affect the ordinary business and resident? If, for example, your home, let's say your home becomes not retrofitted and doesn't align with this official community plan vision, could it become illegal to live in your home? Could it be deemed unsafe? If so, could they move you out of your home and you become concentrated like everybody else in this 15-minute city? I think it's worth considering. 181 states that everything must align. Any existing plans, updating existing plans, policies and strategies must align with the OCP vision and goals. The question I had was as follows. Are you prepared to include in the OCP that it will not violate sections 6, 7 and 9 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? As I understand, this is enshrined in the Constitution of Canada, which is the supreme law of Canada. This supersedes any other law. So in my mind and understanding, they can amend this bylaw. Again, this is a question I wanted to know. On page 182, it states that all residents are strongly encouraged to participate in decision-making processes. Yeah, I felt the same. Is this a mere formality? Are you kidding me? After what they intend to ensure is driven through. So I asked the question, do you feel that the ordinary citizen is aware of the OCP and its implications? Now you're going to inform the general public. Okay, finally, this is the last one. Again, this is just a few selections of the OCP on which I've focused. So it states here that it's going to include water reduction performance targets as part of the new facilities and retrofit initiatives. I've heard within the community that farmers have been visited, I don't know if you're aware of this, by environmental officers, that's what I call them. These people have been armed and they're using intimidation tactics to ensure that wells and water is registered. If it is registered, as I understand, it falls into the hands of the government. It is no longer the farmers. So the question I had was if they intend to install water meters on every home and business, and again, what will that mean? These are serious questions I think that need to be addressed. I think they do warrant our attention and they merit answers. So what do I really think? I am concerned about our current trajectory. I don't know where we're going. I fear that our rights and freedoms could be violated. They could even be lost. That deeply concerns me. I feel that, what do I really feel? Well, I feel that it's incumbent on each one of us, and I'm glad that you're here this evening. It's incumbent on each one of us to be vigilant, to be some kind of sentinel, aware of what's happening, to safeguard and defend our freedoms. I fear that if we don't take action, we become a collective. We may find ourselves in a place looking back at what we had, lamenting what was, and being faced with what is. However, I do have hope. I believe that we can come together. I believe that we can change. If we have faith and hope and that collective unity, I believe we can make a change to this country and ensure that this country returns to what it formerly was. Thank you very much.
Paperwork's missing again. Thank you very much, Andrew. I really appreciate that. I seem to keep losing my paperwork. I don't know. Usually, Andrew has it. Sorry, it's not my normal to use paperwork. I usually just write things out or think things through or pray things over, and then I just go for it. I really don't pay too much attention to what's on board here. However, this evening, because this is certainly different than what we usually do, I do have to watch and read some of my notes. So when I make these little errors, please bear with me. Next, we're going to hear from Sue, and thank you so much, Andrew. I felt that was very informative. I learned one more thing today, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but I really think you need to know it. They are now, because it ties in with what Andrew said, that now in areas A, B, and C, if any of you live in those areas, what they are doing, and they've started it in Royston, they have the septic tank police. And they are coming and knocking on doors and saying, we're here to inspect your septic. And then they inspect it and they say, I'm sorry, it's a failing, it has this wrong with it or that wrong with it, and your house is not safe to stay in, you have to leave. This is in Royston, and it has begun.
Petition in the back.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sure this will be part of the question and answer later. I do have a write-up about it here. I've printed off a few little notes about it. So, and we live in area B in a very old house. Anyway, we love our house and we'll fight. So next on the agenda, I know Jerry's looking at me. That wasn't meant to be. I'm sorry, but I thought you needed to know. Sue Wally is next up. Sue is a retired teacher with a background in psychology and memory research. Sue seeks truth, diving into a myriad of topics surrounding issues of health, psychology, politics, geopolitics, history, social culture, and Zielkis. Sorry, I'm so bad with I didn't bring my glasses, which isn't really helpful. So, and I read the book too. Anyway, Sue believes that humanity has been made in the image of a loving and reasonable God, and we have been endowed with a capacity for creative reason, human ingenuity, and a deep care for this world. She has a genuine hope for a new age of discovery around a paradigm of long-term cooperation between nations and states. She hopes to contribute to whatever small way she can to the preservation of the free will of humanity. So can we welcome Sue now, please?
It's not working. Yeah, I need help. Oops.
That should be good then. I don't know. Oh, it's there.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
I don't know.
Oh, it came on for a moment, right? There it is.
Okay,
Great. Okay. Hi, thanks, everybody. Yeah, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Jerry, and everyone for coming tonight. So my task in the talk tonight is to take a zoom out and look at where is all of this coming from and what's behind it. So as it's already been laid out so well, is that better? Okay. there are so many very concerning things that are happening in the world. And then we were also seeing what was happening in our local communities, and now we see it's coming very fast. So a group of us came together because we had heard of the work of Maggie Braun, and she had started the Kickley Initiative, which is spreading across Canada. So Maggie, and her middle name is Hope, and when you see her, you really are filled with hope. She has a background in ecosystems management and a deep care for the world, for people. But during her program, she realized that there was really no scientific basis for the climate hysteria that was being pushed. And then she started to see that in the official community plans of communities across Canada, that they were actually integrating the Sustainable Development Goals and the net zero policies from the UN. And so she realized that there really was a need for an organization to bring about systematic change through civic engagement. And Gather 2030 was born and now leads the Kickley Initiative. And so that's a project that's designed to help Canadians engage their municipalities, protect their community, and strengthen citizen-led democracy. So tonight, I'm going to, as I was saying, zoom out and look at how the UN directives of sustainable development and net zero policies came to be. As I was preparing for this talk, it became so much bigger than I was expecting, and we're going to cover a lot of ground, so hang on. But to begin, it really became a story about energy, and just how vital energy freedom and energy security is for all of human well-being in society. So net zero policies actually translate to zero growth policies that will lead to degrowth and decline in our society. And when you really break it down, these net zero policies take aim at every aspect of our lives, from the food we eat, to our homes, to our land, to our mobility, to our private property rights, to the rural towns and farms are really being hit hard right now. So, and all of that is dependent upon energy as well. So the whole world is being told that there is simply not enough energy to go around, or that the energy sources must be restricted because they're causing too much carbon to go into the air. But what if that is only a story that has been carefully crafted, and that there is, in fact, the possibility for the entire world to benefit from energy abundance and the prosperity and human flourishing that would follow from that? So to answer the question of why would the UN seek to impose such a radical policy of undermining our energy security, we will look at one man, Maurice Strong, who played a decisive role in this. Maurice Strong believed that the UN should have global governance. We saw recently the WHO, World Health Organization, which is the global health branch of the UN, sought through a global pandemic treaty to override the sovereignty and laws of all the countries of the world in the case of a pandemic that they got to declare at any time. So as one journalist wrote, "The bureaucrats who want to run the world are at it again." And Nigel Farage described the WHO as a failing, expensive, unelected, unaccountable, supranational body that wants to run roughshod over nation states. And this could be said of other affiliates of the UN, like the World Economic Forum, of which Maurice Strong was a founding director. And in his belief for UN global governance, Strong has also sought to undermine nation-state sovereignty and viability. So, to give some background, Strong was a Canadian. He was an oil baron, vice president of Power Corporation by 30, Liberal Party controller and privy councillor. He was the foundation director of the World Economic Forum, mentor to Klaus Schwab, and he would become a primary driver, probably the most primary driver, behind the sustainability movement and the UN's Agenda 21. In 1992, Strong had been assigned to head the United Nations Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. In his opening statement, he declared that it is clear current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving high meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, air conditioners, and suburban housing are not sustainable. A shift is necessary toward lifestyles less geared to environmentally damaging consumption patterns. In that speech, Maurice Strong was essentially advocating for the destruction of the middle class. And I found it interesting, he never said a word about the military-industrial complex, big pharma, the biomedical labs. I mean, the list could go on. It was a target on the middle class. So in a 1992 essay entitled From Stockholm to Rio, published by the UN conference, he went even further, suggesting that nations would have to surrender sovereignty to global dictates. It is simply not feasible for sovereignty to be exercised unilaterally by individual nation states, however powerful. So since the 70s, we have seen a systematic dismantling of industrial and manufacturing sectors. But who among you here tonight know that Canada was a leader in nuclear power in the 70s? How many of you? Yeah, wonderful. And was at the frontier of science and physics, chemistry, and aeronautics. And Canada was making its advanced nuclear technology available to the developing countries such as India and Pakistan, and they were looking to help Africa to develop their nuclear power. They were going to bring CANDU reactors over to Africa, but that was squelched. And it is vital to examine Strong's role in crippling Canada's potential to make use of nuclear power, one of the greatest beacons of hope for mankind. In his role as president of Petro-Canada, he was busy. Strong endorsed the national call to create a nuclear moratorium for Canada, which was carried out in 1977. Strong also made the argument that more jobs could be created if ecologically friendly energy sources were developed, instead of nuclear and fossil fuels. But as we have seen, green energy is not really green, nor is it energy efficient or reliable. So it was, there was a very well-organized fear campaign to demonize nuclear power, even though it is by orders of magnitude the safest and most effective source of energy known to man. And we have seen the UN also demonize fossil fuels, which simply cannot be replaced in terms of its abundance, reliability, versatility, and scalability. Fossil fuels provide 80% of the world's energy. And I'll just, in the chart below, you see in the late 1800s, when they discovered oil, that's when we had the great spike up of life expectancy, world population, the GDP per capita all went up. Energy provides security and abundance. And I read that the carrying capacity of the world changes depending upon our energy source. So hunter-gatherer civilizations, the carrying capacity for the world is 10 million. And with fossil fuels, and particularly with nuclear energy, the carrying capacity, well, with fossil fuels would be around maybe 10 billion, and with nuclear energy, far beyond that. So be fruitful and multiply, and there is superabundance in the world. So in 1987, Strong played a key role in, and you may be asking why would they want to do this? Wouldn't they want nations of the world to achieve energy security and abundance? The answer to this is no, because when a nation has energy independence, it makes it so much more difficult for a globalist system to assert or maintain its control. Therefore, in their mind, the nations must be limited in their capacity for energy development and security to both manage current populations and justify global governance. A framework of sustainability and net zero policies was put into place. In 1987, Strong played a key role in the writing of the book, Our Common Future, and that was followed by the Euro Summit, Agenda 21, which is a 300-page implementation plan for sustainable development. Its stated goal was to promote sustainable development worldwide, but the Rio Summit had an unstated goal of establishing a new era in the consolidation of NGOs and corporations to establish global governance. So Strong has been attributed with coining the term sustainable development. Oops, sorry. Just gotta. And the US has the best marketing team that money can buy, and so many of the terms used, like sustainable development, sound wonderful and positive. When asked what SD means, most people say something like, it is an effort to save the planet from climate change, green energy, more responsible energy usage, waste control, or recycling. But what does sustainable development mean? In reality, the UN popularized the term sustainable development, and it is first a framework that will curtail energy security and growth and development of a nation, and second, it is a planning concept that calls into question individual property rights. So during the Brundtland Commission, a conference held in 1976 in Vancouver, the UN laid out its official policy on land. The preamble states that land should not be treated as a regular asset that is controlled by individuals. Public control of land is indispensable. So again, it brings into question individual private property rights. And what do we see being rolled out right now? How many of you have heard of the 30 by 30 plan? Some of you, yeah, it's pretty new. I just heard of it a couple of weeks ago. This is the UN's plan to reserve 30% of the land and 30% of the water away from non-human use by 2030 and 50% of the land by 2050. And in 2022, our Stephen Gobot, Minister of Environment and Climate Change, went to a UN conference on biodiversity, and he promised to set aside federally managed properties to meet the UN's biodiversity and sustainable development goals. This is the same minister that's trying to kill the energy industry and who recently stated Canada was done with roads. Don't really need them. So, But local municipalities are also expected to play a pivotal role in the implementation of these sustainable development goals. The Cowichan Valley Council is proposing protecting 30% of land by 2030 and 50% by 2050. The people living in the Cowichan Valley have come to ask, what does this mean? Whose land? Which, you know, where would we go? What does this mean for industry and for the economy? And they did bring in a so-called expert, but there was no answers forthcoming. So in a land as vast as Canada, we are voluntarily signing up to UN dictates to essentially cordon off half of our land and water from the people of Canada. It seems the next level of mad, and but it has all been orchestrated and designed by the UN. So how did we get here, where the UN and its unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats and globalist billionaires have gained so much influence and control over our towns and cities? Oh, that's the 30 by 30, sorry. And so we will go back to, in 1992, Mulroney signed on to the Agenda 21 in Rio de Janeiro, and 2 years prior, the United Nations created ICLEI, which is the International Council on Local Environmental Initiative, now called Local Governments for Sustainability. Originally, so this organization is what they're using to be able to go around all of the systems of government, our executive, legislative, and judicial, and they go in through the back door using the administrative branch. So in 1994, ICLEI Canada partnered with the Government of Canada to fund sustainable development programs to achieve net zero by 2050. Since its beginning, the FCM was the national voice for the Canadian municipalities, but during the 80s and 90s, the focus of FCM flipped from serving and representing the needs of local councils and their communities to representing and pushing the goals of the global UN Agenda 2030 and net zero policies and the SD goals. And I'm sure Maurice Strong had a huge hand in this. The FCM even helped to write the handbook for the Rio de Janeiro summit around so they were, Jerry, you were talking about the complete co-opting and weaponizing of our institutions. The FCM even helped to write, I said that, sorry. Okay, so in that same year, ICLEI Canada partnered with the Government of Canada to fund sustainable development programs, and probably the best known is Partners for Climate Protection Program. And it has to date about 400 municipalities, but about 70% of the Canadian population. The primary objective of the PCP program is to achieve net zero emissions by the year 2050. This means that our economy should not emit any greenhouse gas emissions, or should offset its emissions through carbon taxes and credits. So the program has a five milestone framework that includes conducting an in-depth corporate and community greenhouse gas inventory and forecasting, setting a greenhouse gas reduction target of 45% by 2030 and 100% by 2050, developing a local action plan, implementing the plan, and monitoring progress while reporting results. The first milestone is to calculate all our total GHG emissions. So the city staff spend hundreds of hours calculating how many cars we all have, what is our electrical usage, how much gas are we using, how much waste are we producing, how much is going into the landfill, how many cows do you have, burps and farts. Could this have anything to do with what they want, why they want everyone to register every single farm animal and all the private wells in the valley? So take that calculation, put it into ICLEI software, set that production target to 0 or 45%, then it pumps out all these strategic action items for your municipal plans, so they can reach targets of 45% reductions by 2030 and net zero by 2050. So it is through the local town councils that they are monitoring and tracking our output through our carbon footprint. And we must recognize that net zero, as defined by the UN, is impossible for any community to achieve. Therefore, we will be levied with ever-increasing carbon taxes, including all of life's essentials. I love taxing Canadians into poverty will not change the weather. John Rustad. So, and we've seen, and in all things, money is always present. And from the very beginning of Agenda 21, 2030, big money was baked into the cake. In his opening address, Maurice Strong introduced the need for carbon taxation and emission permits that are tradable internationally. So, and as we have seen, carbon taxes, carbon markets, carbon trading, carbon pricing, and cap and trade all come into existence to create what today is a multi-trillion-dollar net zero carbon industry. And does anybody remember when Al Gore, he was, winning the Nobel Prize, but he had huge shares in a cap and trade company. And so he went from like $1 million, he had a ranch or some land, to today, I just checked, it's like $250 million. So, yeah. So Klaus Schwab has recently stated that the world now needs a global carbon tax, if that wasn't enough. And of course, these are the same people who are flying into Davos, Switzerland on their private jets, making plans for us, not for me and not for thee. But, many now are seeing the glaring hypocrisy and the threat from this. And if you notice, so we were talking about it last night. This is the symbol for the circular economy and also sustainable development goals. Has anybody seen this around? No? Yeah. Where did you see it, Deb? Yeah. So somebody said, yeah.
In one of the seaside parks in Nanaimo, they've got the city of Nanaimo in great big letters with that circle as the O for Nanaimo.
Wow, okay. The O for Nanaimo, yes. Right at the end, yeah. And someone was saying they're now in the schools, so they're going to start to roll this out. And as we were watching Jerry and Andrew's presentation tonight, I was thinking about, we woke up to SOGI and we woke up to the WEF and we woke up to the WHO. Well, the next thing is we need to wake up to the UN and the Sustainable Development Goals. Because once we wake up to it, we can, effectively push back. So that's part of what Maggie Braun was bringing through. This is all coming directly from the UN. So, okay. So, and just in 2019, the WEF and the UN signed a strategic partnership framework to jointly accelerate the implementation of 2030 agenda. And they wanted to do it through climate change and digital something. So, in the 92 Rio Earth Summit address, Maurice Strong also stated that these new and additional funds may be channeled, at least initially, through a number of existing institutions and programs. So what does that look like in practice? Well, the Government of Canada and Italy give money to the FCM to promote the green agenda. And if you go to the FCM website now, you will see that pretty much every program they have is about sustainable development and climate change and green energy. Our municipalities can get extra funding through the Green Municipal Fund, now worth $1.7 billion, and the Municipal Asset Management. And I was looking at this one here, Net Zero Asset Management Managers Initiative, $9 trillion. I don't know what that. So, and the list goes on. So this is where the money is coming from. The federal government and the UN take our money. We actually give a lot to the UN, and then they give it back if we implement Agenda 2030. So if the local city councils won't do that, then they don't get the extra funding. But of course, a lot of the premiers are starting to speak out about this because the program should not be prioritizing global interests over local needs and priorities. But once we know, we can fix it. Until we know, yeah. So, and now, perhaps, has anybody heard of this? The $8 billion Net Zero Accelerator Fund? So apparently they started this, and I'm not kidding, Net Zero Accelerator Fund for $8 billion, and they were giving it huge sums of money away to large corporations for lowering their emissions, excepting for the Canadian Environmental Commissioner just did a review, and he said there was no commitment, no promises, no accountability. $8 billion, that's in Canada B. And apparently there's been, and they won't release the names. They won't give the names of the corporations or the amounts of money that they've given away. So there we are. That just broke a few days ago, but hasn't seemed to hit the mainstream yet. Or I know you guys aren't in the mainstream, but and according to the, there was also more slush fund money and corruption allegations. So, yeah, it's a boondoggle. So we need to ask where the risk-benefit analysis for these policies and programs is. And I was just actually listening to a talk before I came tonight, and they were like, there is absolutely no risk-benefit analysis. So we did one on our own. And they tell us that we must lower our carbon footprint to reduce the carbon in the atmosphere. So let's do the calculations. Carbon dioxide makes up 0.04% of the atmosphere. Tiny, tiny, tiny. And I was surprised by this one. Humans are responsible for 5%. Well, some say 3 to 5% of total carbon emitted into the atmosphere. That means 95 to 97% of carbon is coming from all natural sources. Take your municipality population, which is 0%, or even that of Canada, 1.5%. You multiply that out and you get 0. So, and consider Canada's vast forests making up 40 to 60% of our total land area, and the billions of trees absorbing CO2, making, and I was looking, I think it was like, I don't know, it's beyond trillion, quadrillion, in terms of the pounds of carbon that can be cleaned by our vast forests, making Canada probably the greatest carbon sink, and at net zero time, many times over. The point is to get us to net zero, but we are there. And Suzanne sent me this today. So from page 182, carbon neutrality by 2050. And they're gonna make us give up everything and put us into energy poverty and on and on. So it's really a house of cards. And I think once we start to stand up, in fact, the same program that I was listening to about climate, they said there's been a huge increase in young people that are not believing the climate hysteria anymore. And it's just... And politics follow culture, usually. So as soon as we get out there and we're saying, no, we're not up for this anymore, it'll change. So, and what if we were to consider the potential risks and consequences of these policies in people's lives? The list is long, but for starters, widespread local challenges like housing may be, in part, the result of the programs like the PCP. So zero carbon energy step code. So you've got permits and inspections, licenses and codes just driving up continually. The cost of housing, the cost of rent, and how does that spiral into a sense of helplessness and homelessness and mental health? And they do their computer modeling. They do their computer modeling, and I don't think that the human element ever comes through. So, and in terms of energy policy across Vancouver Island, local councils appear to be adopting a unified stance on the demonization and restriction of natural gas. So a question arises, does the island possess the grid capacity to rely solely on BC Hydro? And could this result in escalating bills? When the electricity goes down, natural gas fireplaces and wood stoves still work. Considering that far more global fatalities occur due to cold-related issues than heat-related ones, affordability in energy choices is crucial. 15 to 20 times more people die of cold. Even in the hot countries, more people die of cold than the heat. And we never hear that, do we? It's just always heat. To give one really sad example from abroad, in Europe, the Economist came out with an article saying that expensive energy may have killed 68,000 people prematurely because they could not afford the heat. So when considering the possible consequences of implementing these policies, it's crucial to note that the FCM, ICLEI, and the Government of Canada, the very institutions that are creating, funding, and endorsing these programs to local councils, do not bear any responsibility for them. You can see right here, notwithstanding this support, the views expressed are the personal views of the authors, and ICLEI Canada, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and the Government of Canada accept no responsibility for them. So that means the responsibility is probably laid at the feet of the mayors and councillors who have no idea. In fact, many of the mayors and councillors don't even know that it had been signed on, and they don't know what the city staff is doing. So it's all in the back room. And this is on the PCP website as a map with an index of the communities who have signed on. We have that motion that Courtney signed in 2006, and all of the cities in the valley and to join the PCP. And we will be asking for council to reconsider and then rescind this motion. So I will use Courtney's OCP as an example, but it will apply to many cities and towns across Canada who have signed on to this OCP. So here's Courtney's logo, and you can see OCP 2030 there on board. And at the center, with a compass that identifies the four core directions of the plan: reconciliation, community well-being, equity, and climate action. Their mission statement says these core directions are reflected in the hundreds of policies contained throughout the plan. It follows the Partners for Climate Protection Plan to a T. Like you read Partners for Climate Protection Plan, and you just go boo. And so a lot of times the city staff are actually pumping out these plans, taking it to the counselors, and they have no idea. They're just like, oh, good job on that. And they think that they're still somehow getting the consultation of the public. So, and the PCP also has a whole booklet on how to implement the DEI initiatives for at the local level. So, and then I was thinking, well, I saw it came up on my feed one day, and I saw, wow, that looks like a pretty cool local council. So Clearwater, Alberta does not have a PCP. So I was just, okay, well, what do they value? Economic prosperity, cooperative alliance, environmental stewardship, community social growth, and fiscal responsibility. And we believe in their mission statement that people want to live in a connected whole community. They want good jobs and business opportunities while protecting the natural beauty and maintaining the quality of life that attracts so many to live here. To attract new families, new businesses, and new industry, we need to invest strategically and responsibly, but in a way that also ensures we are resilient, adaptable, and prosperous. So when comparing the two community plans, environmental stewardship seems to be a broader and more encompassing picture, including clear skies, clean rivers and lakes, rich productive farmland, and abundant parks and wilderness areas for all to enjoy. Whereas climate action focuses on carbon, primarily tracks and traces, greenhouse gases output, traces that naturally and forever will make up a tiny portion of our atmosphere. And I was personally encouraged that Clearwater stated support for families, businesses in the community, economic development, and fiscal responsibility. So could the difference be between the two community plans that one is based on the PCP and the other community plan based on the input and perspectives of the local community constituents? I'll leave that as an open question. So I'm going to shift now and share a little bit about Maggie's story because it provides a lot of insight and a possible path forward. So after putting some of these pieces together, Maggie and John Dunn gave their first deputation in Peterborough. John addressed the fact that Peterborough had just declared a state of climate emergency, and Maggie addressed the implementation of Agenda 21 through Canadian municipalities. So quite remarkably, their delegations went viral, and to date, over 1 million people have seen Maggie's delegation. In Maggie's deputation or delegation, she highlighted ICLEI's role in forwarding the UN's global agenda and the measures needed to meet the required net zero by 2050. So it created quite a stir because, like I was sharing, the smaller townships all around Peterborough, they had no idea. They're under the umbrella of the Peterborough Regional District, and so that's where the official community plans come from. So mayors and councillors started to talk to one another, and lo and behold, a short time later, Trudeau shows up in town, and he has a meeting with the mayor and with the CAO. So he's looking a little concerned there, I think. And hard to know, but were they saying something that the PM did not want brought out into the open, such as naming ICLEI and the municipal primer and the connection to the UN directives? She is talking to people about showing up at council meetings and educating council members about how city council's duty to represent their constituents has been usurped. Does the government not want people to realize that they could potentially push back on this plan? So, and you'll see, a friend pointed out, the CAO has 2 cell phones. So, very important guy. The CAO's their salaries are probably the highest in the city, way higher than the mayor's. And they're most often brought from out of the region, and they are very often trained under the UN directive programs. So interestingly, before the Municipal Act of 2001, mayors appointed their staff locally, and community plans were based on engagement with those who live and work in the community. And I was talking to Adrienne Richards in North Cowichan. She said that the older farmers recounted when they used to meet with City Council every month, and they would just have an old town hall, sharing what was happening, what was needed, what they could, envision for the future. So how times have changed, but I think it's really good to hold that vision of, no, we need to get back there. So, and the FCM is very important to Trudeau. So he goes and he gives keynote speeches, he gives directions to the board members who are elected, and they just get a download of UN directives when they're wined and dined. So recently Maggie gave another powerful deputation in which she pointed out to City Council that Section 92 of the Canadian Constitution places the municipalities under the exclusive jurisdiction of the provinces. Premiers are pointing this out as well. Maggie was raising concerns that one of their councillors was up for election on the FCM's board of directors. She went on to point out that the FCM collaborates directly with the UN through ICLEI Canada, and this could pose a security risk, and that it is currently under investigation. So, right here in Courtenay, our local town councillor, Cole Hamilton, will be standing for re-election on the FCM's board of directors, and this raises similar concerns. And the mayor of Courtenay, Bob Wells, is a member of the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. On the island, Courtenay, Nanaimo, and Ucluelet are 3 of the 25 municipalities selected to join the first Showcase Cities cohort. So there's none in Alberta, none in Saskatchewan. There's only 25. And this is directly from their site. Over the next year, these municipalities will receive intensive support to help reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, that's us, and adapt to climate change. It is again funded by ICLEI, FCM, and this time the European Union. So again, this raises concerns, the same concerns. And when we see what's happened in Europe with the farmers rising up, so much of that is related to these net zero policies. There's places where they've written that agriculture is not sustainable by the time 2050 comes. And I heard, how are you gardening in your backyard? And so, and we also, noted the tragic number of Europeans dying from cold in their own homes, and in many countries in Europe, businesses are now pushing back because of the economic downfall. And obviously that's a complex issue, but they are just plowing ahead. Although they're having to pull back a little bit around the net zero stuff. So in some ways, Europe is just a few years ahead of us, although it's moving fast here now. And so it could be a bellwether of what is to come here. And another concerning unfolding that many local councils across Canada, there's no farmers, no food. Okay. Including, I think, for sure Courtenay and the other town councils have made a declaration of climate emergency. And in North Cowichan, so there's an organization there, COPE, the Citizens Oversight Accountability project. They've been doing stuff for a couple of years now. They're fantastic. They made a FOIA request and learned that North Cowichan Council did not have a definition for climate emergency, and when asked to disclose the evidence, data, correspondence, or other documents in support of the council's decision to declare a climate emergency, they had none, and simply said, NA, not applicable. Just like, they're crazy. How do they do this? So, the CCF, the Canadian Constitution Foundation, stated recently that it is deeply concerned about the proliferation of declarations of emergency in situations where no definition of genuine emergencies exist. So this is like Bill 31, the BC Emergency Act, which has provisions now to take control of people's lands and homes and make it a criminal offense subject to fines and imprisonment if someone were to remain on their property to try and protect their land. And they can declare an emergency whenever, wherever, no science needed, no supporting documentation. So, okay, the supporting rationale, as we've been through, we are in a climate crisis. That's their supporting rationale. And there's been an increase in extreme weather events. So that's why we have to do all of this, impoverish the world because of the climate. So, what's next? Oh, I wanted to just share a little bit about the IPCC. It was founded by the UN in 1988, and here again we see the hand of Maurice Strong, who is the political ally needed for those pushing the climate agenda and seeking to found the UN's IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So the mission statement of the IPCC is to study man-made impact on climate using computer models that project into the future. So I was, we would all be forgiven for thinking that the IPCC would be studying climate change across, time, looking at all the factors that feed in and using real, actual data. But no, they like their climate models. So, and all the chairs and almost all scientists who work for the IPCC are known for their anthropogenic climate change alarmist stance. I'll go back, sorry. There we go. And the UN body echoes this climate alarmism. In 1988, Noel Brown of the UNEP was quoted as saying, "Entire nations could be wiped off the face of the earth by rising sea levels if the global warming trend is not reversed by the year 2000. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres recently stated that we have gone beyond the era of global warming. We are now in an era of global boiling." And for whatever reason, I love reading books about climate and, this whole thing. And it just goes on and on. The crazy predictions they were making in the 70s and the 80s, and none of them came true. And it doesn't matter, they just continue. So, climate realism. So, this is a statement from Kickley. At Kickley, we recognize that most Canadians care deeply about our natural environment and are eager to protect it. Therefore, we are committed to addressing the supporting rationale of climate catastrophe in a calm and balanced manner. Our approach is to promote education and public awareness on climate realism, providing evidence of natural climate change factors, the benefits of CO2 as the basis of all life on Earth, and supporting everything with basic facts and peer-reviewed studies. So, and many people will get up and do deputations, and they've got a whole Climate Science 101 with all of the scientific publications and the slideshow there for you. It's very fun. Okay, so has global warming increased natural disasters? Well, I'll just run through some slides for you. There is no statistical evidence that global warming is intensifying natural disasters or making them more frequent. Should I put that? So most of Antarctica is cooling and gaining ice. Heat extremes are declining. Global area burned, 100 years of decline. And I know a lot of people wonder, last year was a record-breaking forest fire year for BC. But in the 90s, the forestry practice that they did, where there was no clearing of debris, all of the wood built up, and then I just heard today too that our forests are really old. So from the 90s, people were saying these forestry practices are going to lead to, the kind of forest fires we saw last year. Finland has very different forestry management practices. They had zero loss. So, I know it's not the size of BC, but it's frustrating that they always just automatically go to climate change. It's a good scapegoat for politicians. So, and extreme tornadoes are decreasing. Droughts are declining worldwide. And then climate facts. So this is a website from CO2 Coalition. It's, again, many climate scientists, experts in the field, physicists, and they've also got a children's section, which is wonderful. So I want to acknowledge, that people still do have different climate change theories, but I'll present some more slides of climate and CO2 facts compiled from the CO2coalition.org and Clintel and the World Declaration. Scientists and experts from related fields who are drawing from the work of 40 years. So the World Climate Declaration, signed by over 1,900 scientists, there is no climate emergency. And climate science should be less political, while climate policies should be more scientific. And we were told 97% scientists agree. The scientific review actually showed that only 0.3% of published scientists stated in their papers that recent warming was mostly man-made. We can see here that the Earth has warmed slightly, but really it's only been about a degree over 100 years, and we can talk about that. But you can see the prediction that the IPCC made, and every prediction they make is always off. It's always to the warm side. So, and as we discussed, the IPCC uses its own computer models and projections, and according to many climate scientists, leaves out many critical factors that contribute to something as immensely complex as climate, including the sun. Alternative scientific perspectives that solar activity may indeed play a significant role are essentially ignored by the IPCC. And how many of you saw the Aurora Borealis the other night? You did, yay, good. Whoops. So the Aurora Borealis, lighting up the sky around the world over the last couple of days. So we are in the midst of a major solar event of corona mass ejections. The sun has now reached its 11-year solar maximum, and as of today's record solar activity suggests, this year's solar maximum is turning out to be a peak among solar maximums. So every 11 years, the sun goes from solar maximum, and then the next 11 years is solar minimum. And that's one cycle. And then there's cycles of 200 years, and cycles of 400 years, and cycles of 1,000 years. So there's cycles within cycles. So it will likely be another scorcher of a summer, and we've had a couple of really, really hot days for May, and it may well have been. the corona mass ejection, though it's really the sun and aided by undersea volcanoes. How many of you heard about the Hunga Tonga? The underwater volcano? Some of you did. So, they started saying, oh no, the oceans are warming very quickly. Well, we just had the largest underwater volcano. Brent, how high did the...
Really high.
Really high? It went right into the stratosphere? Wow, yeah. Yeah, so, but again, they don't want to cover that, and it was spectacular. It was just stunning. Jeff Childers covered it, but... So, moreover, these models exaggerate the effects of CO2 and ignore the benefits of additional CO2 in the atmosphere. And recognizing that CO2 is natural to all of life with so many benefits, 95% of the local councils in northern Saskatchewan have stated that CO2 is not a pollutant, and they will no longer implement the UN directives because net zero policies have been so damaging to their communities and their economies. So I think so. And it really is in the rural communities, that people will rise up, they'll make the changes, and then it will filter into the cities, I think. So the Geological Archive reveals that the Earth's climate has varied as long as the planet has existed. In our present day, we are essentially in a carbon dioxide drought. So here we are, right down at the bottom corner over here. And we're at 400 parts per million. You can see in the Cambrian era, 6,000 parts per million during the greatest explosion of life on Earth during the Jurassic period. Do they have it up there? Oh, there it is. Okay, so that was close to 2,000 parts per million. So, I read, have any of you read Dr. Patrick Moore's book on fake catastrophe? No? Oh, it's a wonderful book. Okay, Andrew has. So he talked about how dangerously low we were in CO2, and that we are actually liberating the CO2 back into the atmosphere. It's a very, very important. So CO2, and you can see here the 140 million year trend of dangerously decreasing CO2 down to, and we got to just around 200 parts per million. At 150 parts per million, plants start to die, in which case no plants, no animals, life would die. So, and this needs to be stated, I think often and joyously, CO2 is not a pollutant. CO2 we breathe out, and plants and trees breathe CO2 in. We are made of CO2. It is plant food, and this is vital. If you increase CO2 from 150 in a greenhouse up to 300, up to 450, which is where we are, then you are in a greening world. And in fact, NASA has published that the Earth is greening hugely with a little more CO2, and this is all great news. So more CO2 means more plant growth. This means more vegetables and fruits and legumes. And more CO2 feeds more people worldwide. Grain production is breaking records. Great news for all the people of the world. And recognizing that CO2 is natural to all of life. Temperatures have changed dramatically during the past. Oh, that's okay, sorry. So this is the plot for the last 2,000 years. Before climate science became politicized, warm periods were referred to by scientists as climate optima, because almost all species on Earth, warmer is better than colder. The most dramatic advances in civilization took place during the last 4 warm periods, including our own. So the Little Ice Age from 1300 to 1800 was the coldest period over the last 10,000 years, and it ended, well, started coming out of it in 1700s, but by 1850, we were really starting to come out. So it is ended, and it is no surprise we are now experiencing a period of warming. And the polar bears are doing great. So they're continuing to climb well past 30,000. And finally, most strikingly, whoops, I'm gonna go back. Oh no, where's my slide? Oh, sorry guys. Oh, there we are. Okay. Over the past 100 years, annual climate-related deaths have declined more than 96%. And this is due to having affordable, abundant, reliable energy. As Cynthia Chung points out so poignantly in her new film, The Eye of the Storm, Energy Wars, out of all the basic resources to our health and what contributes to the quality and longevity of our lives, energy is the most important and basic resource that will determine to what degree we live an empowered life versus a disempowered one. Without energy, we live mostly poor and destitute lives. And I'll quote here from scholars in the engineering and economics of energy and expertise in climate science. The rush to transition from fossil fuels to wind, solar, and other green energy sources, and that was Maurice Strong, he led the way, which are now shown not to be so green, threaten to stall or reverse the conquest of poverty in the less developed world, and even push hundreds of millions of people in the more developed world back into poverty, with consequences so dire. So, oh, am I going the wrong way? Oh, sorry. Okay. So when we look to Africa, the choice is stark. UN net zero policies being imposed on developing nations is now often referred to as climate colonialism, sentencing 750 million people who still have no electricity to a life of hardship, toil, poverty, and premature deaths. Without electricity, people must still use wood and animal dung, and usually it's indoors, and they often develop blindness and lung cancer. So this is the UN, and so when they say we need to do climate action for the poor, they are lying. They are damning these people to a life of poverty. But there is another story. So there's with the Belt and Road Initiative, they're starting to build more hydro dams and trains and roads, and with energy and infrastructure, they're able to build out water management systems, which means clean running water for all, and vastly increased food security with refrigeration and irrigation systems, waste management systems. This will make possible economic growth through expanding trade and manufacturing and industrial development and entrepreneurship, and will raise the people to a whole new standard of living and quality of life. All of this is possible with the abundant, reliable, affordable, scalable energy and all the infrastructure that comes with that. So I feel that the same to be true for Canada, that we too are at a crossroads. Canada is home to 0.5% of the world's population. Our land is vast and rich in resources, capable of providing security and prosperity to all. I pray we will rise to our full potential, both for ourselves and for the world. And with all this in mind, and now that we can see the connection to how these UN policies are being implemented, we have the opportunity to reach out to our councils, to inform, to educate, and to name the unnamed risks and consequences that have not been considered. But going forward, we can also envision a future of great potential. We can provide support and backing for the councillors who really want to honor the perspectives and needs of the local community, and remind others that they have been elected to be the representatives of the local constituents who elected them to public office. which is what Maggie and Kickley have continued to do. So she began to go into smaller communities around Peterborough to help people there get organized, and they started getting wins. In a small community in Durham, the farmers were concerned that through official community plans, they would be eventually driven from their homes, and they were correct in their assessment. Through the OCP, they were driving all future growth away from the municipalities and moving them into the settlement areas, into the 15-minute cities. And they were proposing changes to the provincial mapping that would make it really hard for them to hang on to their property. Eventually, the farmers would have to sell their land because they wouldn't be able to maintain it. And this was all being done by city staff who aren't elected in consultation with international consultant groups like ICLEI. They brought all this forward to the Durham Council, and once the city councillors realized this, one after another, I'll show you a picture. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't get there. So that's Maggie with the farmers and the community members. And here is the Durham councillors. Once they realized what was happening, because they had no idea, they said we could not in good faith approve the Peterborough County's official plan, that the deputation stated facts, and the OCP would be a death sentence for their municipality. And it is time they stood and be counted. And in the words of Maggie Braun, this is a wonderful example of what can happen when we come together, especially in small towns and rural areas where we say we are here. We've been asleep for a little while. We're sorry, but we're back. And we want a local agenda, and we're here to get behind you. You are the government. The city staff is not the government. For too long, the city staff has been basically running the show, and all this is easy to point out. And we can take back Canada, we can take back the smaller towns, we can take back the rural north. They want us to abandon the land, but we will not. We may find that some city councils on the island will not be as receptive to some of these revelations, but we are in good stead with a growing number of Kickley groups across Canada and communities like Cope in the North Cowichan, which already have a very active citizens group of 2,000. They have been giving many delegations to their town councils packed with local community members. So recently in Saanich, the city council held an open town hall forum to have public comment on the proposed official community plan. Apparently it was an incredible night filled with community spirit. The hall was packed and people gave their public statements until 1 o'clock in the morning. A number of the participants were from the Kickley Initiative and were able to shine a light on the UN directives programs. 92% of the people spoke out against the ratification of the OCP. It is happening. So I would like to close by highlighting the importance of publications like the New Gather 2030 newsletter and Westwind Independent, which is published by Adriana Richards of North Cowichan. These publications feature the stories of local people rising up, and it is incredible to read what is happening right here on the island and in small communities across Canada. No need to look further afield for intrigue, suspense, cliffhangers, and heartbreak and triumph. In those pages are the stories of our lives, and I believe we are in an extraordinarily right moment where we can make a tremendous difference for the future of our community, for our children, for our children's children, and for our nation going forward. The focus has come back home to the heart of our hometowns.
I don't know what you can say after that, but thank you so much, Sue. That was an abundance of information, and I know that she has spent hours and hours putting that together. Suzanne, did you want to? Yeah, so we're going to, I just want to say just a thought that many times it came to me just tonight, that the importance of groups working together. There's been a lot of, fractions within the groups, but I think this is time, as I said, many groups are represented here. Before you go, please don't go, oh, people are leaving. This actually, quite a bit of, I just want to highlight actually Dan. Dan has been here, has been live streaming this. And he has done this and free of charge. But we were hoping to get some donations from people, so we're going to hand out a donation bucket now. So if you guys could be a little bit generous, I would really appreciate it. It has cost a fair bit of money to put this together, and especially we wanted to honor Dan with giving him a donation from tonight. Susanna, did you want to say something? No. Did you want to say something?
Okay, everyone, I know we've been sitting for a long time, so if you want to just stand up and wiggle around for a minute, feel free. We're about to go into a question and answer period, and you've got question cards on your seat. And we'd ask if you have questions, if you could write them down, and we'll have people collect them at the sides. So, our intention tonight was to not only raise awareness about the problem, this global agenda that's being rolled out in our councils, and what we see coming if we don't stop it, but we also are presenting a solution. And the solution, like Sue said, is what Maggie Braun is doing with Kickley and what Adriana Richards is doing in the Cowichan Valley with her team, with COPE, Citizens Oversight and Accountability Project, and it involves concerned citizens going into councils and making presentations or deputations for the purpose of educating them and persuading them to withdraw their participation from these UN directive programs. That participation was voluntary. And they can withdraw it by rescinding their original motion to join. And that will be the recommendation we make when we go before councils. So we'd like your support tonight in 3 ways. If you support what we're doing, which is trying to restore local government authority, then there's 3 things that we would ask. I don't have the clicker. Do you have the clicker? No? Okay. So on your seat as well is a little flyer from Kickley. So Kickley is Maggie Braun's group. Yep. Well, how do you move forward? Okay. And Kickley is a play on words. It's kicking ICLEI, this international organization, out of our local councils. So kickley.ca, it's a new website just being launched. We encourage you to go to it. It's still being populated, but it's a great place to learn about strategies and tools that are working across the country, to see deputations and read scripts, and there's letters and templates. So one way you can support us is to sign our statement of support. And the tables over here. And basically the idea is that when we go to make deputations to the councils, we want to be able to say that we are coming with the support of hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the community, okay? And this statement of support, we already have 89 signatures coming in here tonight. We hope to get more. It has the resolution that we are going to recommend councils pass. And it's the resolution to rescind their motion to join the Partners for Climate Protection UN program. And I'm just going to read what it says. So this is the recommendation we will make to councils at the deputation. Whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability established the Partners for Climate Protection Program in 1994, aimed at reducing or offsetting greenhouse gas emissions to zero by 2050 by completing GHG inventories and forecasts of all corporate and community energy use and waste, setting GHG reduction targets, developing local action plans, implementing the plans, monitoring progress, and reporting results. Whereas the Government of Canada and the FCM accepts no responsibility for the PCP program, leaving council members solely responsible for its endorsement and implementation, which, and there's a number of things that were mentioned before, increasing costs, driving population to certain areas, targeting mobility, privacy rights, impacting water, property rights, food and energy security. Whereas environmental policies must respect both scientific and economic realities, CO2 is not a pollutant, and Canada's trees absorb more than double the CO2 that we emit. Whereas participation in the PCP program is voluntary and the municipality can leave at any time, be it resolved that the council of the municipality of, you can put in Courtenay, Comox, Cumberland, CVRD, they were all in the room when they passed the motion to join the PCP. And be it further resolved that the municipality of communicate to FCM and ICLEI Canada the cancellation of its membership in the PCP program. So that's what you would be signing if you sign our statement of support. Okay? So that's the first action you can take. The second action is if you want to be notified when there are deputations, please sign our contact list. We want to fill the council chambers so that the councils know that the community is paying attention to this issue. And, and the third thing, deputations. The deputations will be much more effective if a lot of different people are involved. So there's lots of different tasks to do, like monitoring the council agenda, securing delegation spots, making press releases, putting together information packages to the councillors, and there will also be chances to do delegations. So if you are interested in learning more about the issues, if you have time in your schedule to go to council meetings, if you enjoy public speaking, and even if you don't like public speaking, but you're up for the challenge, you can join us in doing deputations. We will be working as a team. You won't be alone. There's lots of templates and videos online, and we're actually working on putting together a workshop that will probably happen in the next 2 weeks with Maggie Braun and Adriana Richards from the Cowichan Valley Cope. Do some training. So sign up, leave your name in the contact list because we'll be reaching out once that's firmed up. Okay. Yeah, because it's going to take the whole community to stop this, not just this small group of people. So if you can support us in that, whether it's helping support the deputations or actually getting involved in giving deputations, that would be fantastic. Okay. And we just ask that you write D, okay? If you're interested, fill in the contact list and put D beside your name, okay, to show that you're interested in doing something to support the deputations. One last thing, we are seriously considering doing a financial review of the municipality budgets. So if you have experience with accounting or doing financial audits, or you know someone who does, please get in touch with us because your experience will be invaluable for this. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and I hope you left your questions.
Okay. So we were going to have a question and answer period, but I think it's getting too late. And but we do have refreshments in the back, and so we would love people to hang around and mingle and talk to us and talk to each other and network. The other thing I would say as well, too, I just also wanted to thank everybody who was part of organizing all of this. Val, can I have the piece of paper? Sorry, to make sure I don't miss anybody. So first of all, big thanks to Andy and Sue and Suzanne, obviously, who was a huge factor in organizing all of this. Moira and Brent, Tom and Donna, Maria, Sonia, Marianne. They were also very instrumental in pulling this together. I know they met faithfully every Friday night, from what I understand. Thank you to Val for being our MC, all the people in the back who've been helping with the cookies and refreshments, so please hang around. And a big shout out, obviously, to all the security people, Gary, Hillary, Dylan, and Brett, for keeping us safe tonight. You never know what's going on out there, so I really want to appreciate and acknowledge everybody who was a part of making tonight a success. Thank you all for coming. Please get involved at a local level, join a chapter, join our chapter, follow up on what Suzanne was saying, and also, yeah, let's try and build bridges in our community. We're all in this together. So thank you very much indeed. And I think we've got one last slide maybe that's going to go up that might. And please, I also do again want to acknowledge Dan, who was live streaming tonight. He will have an e-transfer address up there if you want to donate to him directly. And I think that's going to come up on the last slide. Yeah, thank you very much. It was a great night. Oh, sorry, one last thing. We have meetings here the second Monday of every month. So please come and join us. Be part of the solution.